Hello, and a good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you. Good people of YouTube, hope you're hope you're feeling grand, and always around the world. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the A&Q Wednesday, everybody. Let's dive into question one today. Okay, so question one today is: do you think cheaper pedals like Tone City, for example, are good enough to play gigs with? Yes, I have done. My Tone City Golden Plexi has been on my board for I don't know how long time now. But basically since they first came out. But yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, they're no less sturdy than any other pedal. You know what I mean? As long as you look after the things and you're not trying to as long as you're not abusing them or anything like that, they'll work fine. Yeah. There's no issues with cheaper pedals. Like I say, I mean, I've been using stuff like the Marshall pedals and the Tone City pedals and stuff like that. They always, they just work. They do their job. I love them. I love them to bits. Touch wood. But yeah, they definitely will. Yeah, no worries at all. I understand where that comes from, though. I mean, to be honest with you, I do remember some stories. I've got a good story to tell you people with YouTube. I had a friend who, I don't know if anybody remembers them, but Dan Electro bought out these pedals way back. They were plastic. I'm sure a lot of people remember these things. They were just these plastic little Dan Electro pedals. They're like miniature versions of the big, huge metal ones. And they were kind of like, there's distortion and choruses and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what though, in that range of pedals, there was a Leslie speaker cabinet pedal. And I forget exactly what it was called. It was probably called something stupid because they all had weird names. But this Leslie speaker pedal was probably one of the most awesome Leslie speakers I've ever heard, because what it had two switches on it, which were very hard to get because the pedal was probably about that big, so the switches was dead close together, so you have to be really precise. It wasn't good for running about and kind of like just diving on it. But what the really cool thing was it had the engaging switch where you could turn the effect on and off, but the right switch, if I remember correctly, actually ramped the speed up and down. And it wasn't one of those pedals that, when you press it, it immediately goes fast. It literally ramped up like a real Leslie and then ramped down again. And it was so awesome. We had one in Old Hat, and just before I left, I was playing with it loads because I was like, this is so cool. And I was going to buy it, and I was like, right, I need to buy this pedal. I really need to buy this pedal. And then I got basically kicked out. And the day I got the day it kind of all stopped at Old Hat, unfortunately that pedal was the last thing on my mind, so I just kind of forgot all about it. But I'm going to have to find one, actually. I'm going to find one as well. I forget what it was called, but it was amazing. And it won't be that would be a pedal I would not recommend using live, and this is why. So anyway, Dan Electro, when I first started playing, they had these little plastic pedals, so that story aside. Back to the actual story I was going to say. I remember I had a friend and she had distortion. I'm pretty sure it was a distortion pedal by Dan Electro. Anyway, being plastic and very, very, very flimsy pedals, she was doing a gig with it and she stood on it to turn it on, and apparently it just disintegrated under her foot and just went meh and just fell apart. So those kind of pedals, no, they're not giggable. I understand where your question comes from, because pedals like that, yeah, if you're going to get one of those Dan Electro pedals, because they do sound good, those Dan Electro pedals sound really cool. But if you do get one of those, they're home use. You know what I mean? I would say they're good for recording. They're not really live in the moment pedals, because they're going to disintegrate and smash to pieces because they're so flimsy. But I understand that. But no, stuff like Tone City, like in metal housing, like the old Marshall pedals, like the Jackhammer, the Governor, the Blues Breaker, stuff like that. In metal housing, yeah, got no worries with them. If it's plastic housing, then yeah, I'd definitely be a bit more aware. Behringer pedals. Behringer pedals sound really good. They really do sound good. But they are very, very, very brittle. They do tend to break, and they do tend to be a bit flimsy. You've got to be gentle with them. Not as gentle as some other plastic pedals. Behringer pedals will take a kick in, definitely. But some of them, they will, over time, they will develop kind of faults, and eventually, unfortunately, I've seen a few that kind of haven't weathered the storm very well. But like I say, Tone City are in metal housing, you know, and quite a lot of cheaper, lower end pedals these days are in metal housings, and invariably, jobs are good in with that one. You know, as long as you don't get, you know, spill beer on them or coke, or, you know, somebody doesn't throw up on it mid gig, you know, you'll be okay. But I say some of the older cheaper pedals that are made out of plastic, yeah, I definitely understand. I wouldn't be gigging them. They're definitely iffy, to say the least. Like I said, especially those Dan Electro ones. But annoyingly, those Dan Electro pedals sounded really good. We had quite a few of them in Old Hat. I think we had something like called the Pork Loin, which I think was a distortion, but I could be wrong. But that was an amazing... either way, what it was called, the distortion pedal was amazing. It sounded great. And then we had like a chorus which sounded really good. Like I say, the Leslie was the standout pedal for me. It was just immense. I don't know what it was called, but it had a silly name. But it was an amazing Leslie speaker pedal. Absolutely amazing. I mean, in all fairness, it wouldn't take a lot to buy that pedal and get somebody to rehouse it in like a metal housing, so you wouldn't kill it. It wouldn't be a big deal, to be fair with you. But the original plastic housing, my God, the amount of stories I've heard of them just kind of failing and just disintegrating. Like I say, my friend's one, I found that really... I remember when she told me about that, I just found that really funny that she went to stand on it and like she just went like, just kind of hit it and it just went, meh, and just fell apart on stage, mid-gig. Can you imagine that? Yeah, pedal just disintegrates on stage. My gravy. Anyway... But yeah, stuff like Tone City, stuff like that. If it's in a metal housing, you know, jobs are good and really, you know, most cheap pedals these days are in metal housing. I think they've kind of, a lot of these cheaper pedal manufacturers have kind of learned from mistakes of old of plastic housing. They don't really work. You know, they don't. The insides will last forever. The actual core of the pedal, the circuit, you know, the way it sounds and everything will last forever. If the housing goes plastic, that's not. And if that breaks, you're going to throw the pedal away, aren't you? So I think a lot of people have learned... I do apologise on my phone. I think a lot of people have learned to put them in metal housing, even if it's just like a zinc alloy. It works. It's so much better. So yes, no worries about playing gigs with stuff like Tone City pedals. If it's a metal housing, you're okay. I've got a really itchy nose all of a sudden, people assume. Yeah! Anyway, I hope that's the question. We're going to move on to question 2 now. See that? Should have been an assassin. Quick. Dave Simpson. Anyway, Dave Simpson, assassin extraordinaire. Ninja. Maybe in another life. Anyway, moving on to question 2, Dave, before you get distracted by your want to be a ninja. So yeah, don't get distracted by thinking about that. I just got distracted by thinking about Tenchu Stealth Assassins. You know, play that game on PlayStation 1? It was amazing. But it was just to annoy me at the end. It was such a really, really cool game. But at the end of it, the male character, like, he sacrifices himself, which is really, really cool. But he dies. Rikamaru, I think his name was. And he dies. And you're like, no, I don't want you to die. Because you get really attached to him. Well, you get attached to both the characters. And he sacrifices himself at the end. And you're like, no. It's really dramatic. Anyway, moving on to question 2. Question 2 is: Have you ever answered any questions on Hillel Slovak? A few, not many. Hillel doesn't get as much airtime as John, but I've answered a few about Hillel. I'm not that much of a Hillel expert though. The man was a genius, and he was destined for great things. Much in the same way people like Randy Rhoads and Jimi Hendrix, and well, Jimi Hendrix had great things, but he was destined for more as well, and that didn't happen. Jeff Buckley, he was in that camp of people who had so much more to give, but were taken, and shouldn't have been, you know, for one thing or another, and it's just hard. Hillel is definitely one of those overlooked tragic figures. You know what I mean? You look at people like you know, there's a lot of people like, you know, like say Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and stuff like that, and you see them, they're tragic figures in their own right. But Hillel is kind of overlooked as one of those musical geniuses that never got to be. You know what I mean? And I've got so much respect for Hillel and what he did and the style he kind of carved out for John. Because when John joined the Chili Peppers, John knew all their songs. John was a massive fan of the Chili Peppers. He was a massive fan of Hillel. Whenever they played, John was there. And he basically does, Mother's Milk, and those early gigs with John, he's just imitating Hillel. He is Hillel, basically. His guitar tone, his style. John Frusciante, I don't think John Frusciante came to be John Frusciante really until Blood Sugar. And then that was a different John to what we got when he came back doing Californication. That was when John really found his feet. I feel kind of like Mother's Milk is kind of like him trying to emulate some guitarists from the 80s and Hillel. And people like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, there's those kind of influences in Mother's Milk. And then Blood Sugar Sex Magic, he kind of pulled away from that and tried to find out who he was. And then when he came back with Californication, he was him. That was John then. But that's the way I see it. I know that's so subjective, but that's the way I see it. But John was a Hillel clone. That's exactly why he fit so well into the Chili Peppers straight off the bat. Was he had studied the man. He'd studied Hillel. He knew his sound. He knew how to play the songs. He knew what Hillel did here and there, and that he just fits in so neatly to the band because his love for Hillel. So yeah, but I say I've answered a few questions of Hillel. I love Hillel's sound. I would say Hillel had a rawer, nastier sound, like a more aggressive funk tone to John. John in the early days, though, John in Mother's Milk era, it's quite raw and nasty, but I think Hillel's kind of at a bit more of an edge. John was a little bit more refined with the Jimi Hendrix-esque kind of thing. Hillel was obviously a Hendrix nut as well, but I think Hillel had a bit more of an aggression in his tone. Not in his playing, because I think Hillel had quite a lot of finesse in his guitar playing, I feel, personally. To me, John had more finesse. Hillel was a lot rawer of a guitarist. John was a lot more accomplished. You can see that in the way John plays. He's got such a smoothness in his playing, and some of the stuff he does, being like a Steve Vai fan and a Frank Zappa fan, John was, I would say, technically more advanced than Hillel, but Hillel had that rawness and that punk kind of rock attitude kind of thing that John kind of had but didn't have as much as Hillel, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. But like I say, I don't know much about Hillel, but I do love the man's playing. I love his sound. I love the songs they created while they were in the Chili Peppers. And like I say, it's just sad. When you think about it, it's just heartbreaking, really, that he never got to be. It's just really, really upsetting, and it does break my heart. Much in the same way as, Jeff Buckley got one album. People like Nick Drake. All these, Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, all these people. There's a list of people who should still be with us. Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington, the list goes on. Jimi Hendrix, Peter Green, Danny Kerwin. I could go on all day doing this, but let's not. But it's depressing. But Hillel is in there with them. He is really one of those, people who never got the chance. And I don't want to point fingers at at him because of his drug use. That was I'm not here to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't like doing that. That's not the point. It's just, sorry people. It's getting me. It's actually getting me really upset. Apologise on my phone again. But yeah. He's an amazing guitarist, Hillel was, and like I say, it's not really. It is what it is. It is what it is. You can't change history, and you can't change time, and people who aren't here anymore. And the only way to keep them alive is by just remembering them and just doing what you can, really. But yeah. So I've answered a few questions on Hillel, but like I said, I don't really know too much about him technique wise and playing wise. That's definitely more. I'm definitely more in camp John. You know what I mean? It's not the fact I don't love Hillel and his playing, because I do. It's just John's playing appeals just a little bit more than Hillel's. You know what I mean? I love Hillel, but John is just a bit further up there. You know what I mean? Anyway, there's another part of question 2 was, do you consider Hillel an influence, or is it just John alone? No, I have to consider Hillel a indirect influence on me. And what do I mean by an indirect influence? I mean, because John was so heavily influenced by Hillel, and like I say, took a lot from him, and just was him, basically, when he first joined the Chili Peppers, that influence of Hillel in John has been passed to me. And I'm sure it's been passed to a million other people, guitarists as well. Because John's heavy influence of Hillel is in John, so that transfers over to people like me who are influenced by John. You know, it's indirect. It's not direct from Hillel, but it's still there. So I do have to class Hillel as an indirect influence, much in the same way I've got a few indirect influences on the guitar. But Hillel's definitely in there somewhere. You know, I can every now and again I can hear bits of him. Very, very rarely. It doesn't happen as much as John, Mike McCready, Rory Gallagher, Peter Green, you know, and Jimi Hendrix. It doesn't happen as much as them. And I'd say Dave Gilmour and Paul Kossoff and that lot get kind of above him as well. But he's still in there. And like I say, that's a direct result of it coming from, indirectly from John. You know, there's always kind of bounce. You know, you always get your heroes in your playing. You know, when I was analysing Jimi Hendrix and learning to play like Jimi Hendrix, you know, there was bits in there where I was like, well, that just sounds like Albert King, or that sounds like B.B. King, or it sounds like Buddy Guy, you know, or that sounds like Eric Clapton, you know. And when you kind of analyse another guitarist like Peter Green, you get B.B. King, and when you're analysing people like Rory Gallagher, you get all sorts of influences from Rory. Rory was an absolute sponge. You know, there's so much. You know, there's Muddy Waters, there's Howlin' Wolf, there is people like, you know, rock guitarists in there as well, like with Rory's playing. Rory's got so many different kind of strings to his bow, style-wise. You know, there's some country guitarists in there as well, like Big Bo Brunzi, you know, stuff like that. They're all over the place with Rory. Yeah, it's insane, really. I would say Rory's got so many influences that make him, which is so cool, and it just became Rory, which I just love. Anyway. But you say, yeah, do I consider Hillel an influence to John alone? I mean, it is really, my main influence is really John, but indirectly from that, I get John's heroes. You know, Jimi Hendrix, Hillel Slovak, you know, all these other guitarists that John's been inspired by. Through me learning John's stuff, I've taken on certain parts of them as well. You know what I mean? You know, Jimi Hendrix was always a big hero of mine anyway, but you know what I mean? I learnt John first and then got into Jimmy later, which means I was already kind of doing Jimi Hendrix stuff, learning Under the Bridge. So when it came down to learning Bold as Love or Little Wing, you know, I understood it more because I'd kind of got there with John. It was a different level, kind of so to say. Because whereas John would kind of like do kind of chords and kind of do Jimmy diddly dum kind of things like, kind of stuff like that. Jimmy would always kind of like go, you know, there's a slight difference in their styles, but they're both kind of coming from the same place, if that makes any sense. Sorry, people, for cheering. All of a sudden, I've got the brain pattern that I've got the fear again that I'm just not making any sense and this is garbage. So I'm going to try and forge on and hopefully it's making some kind of sense. So yeah, anyway, I hope it's answered your question. I'm going to move on to question 3 now. I'm in a funny place in my head today, people. I really am. I'm very split. There's part of me that wants to be happy, and there's part of me that just wants to be clinically depressed. And I'm in the middle of both, and I don't know where I am. I'm just emotionally confused today. So I do apologise about me being a bit all over the shop. I'm trying to be happy, but at the same time I'm trying to be dragged down. It's like I don't know what I'm doing. The joys of mental health. Anyway, let's move on to question 3, Dave. Okay, so question 3 today is, how do you deal with the saddle screws in a strat bridge? Mine hurt my hand when I palm mute. Okay, so the grub screws in the saddles of a strat, yeah, I know what you mean. They do tend to stick out quite far. And I do understand they can hurt that part of your hand if you're palm muting. Personally, I don't mind it. I think it's just because I've played strats for so long, it just isn't really a thing anymore. I don't really... it doesn't really bother me anymore. I understand, like, you know, I understand if, like, you know, it can be annoying and it can hurt, you know, and it can scratch your hand up. I've actually sliced my hand open a fair few times, actually, there, on my guitars. It doesn't happen anymore. Now I've said that, though, I'll go and play guitar later on and slice my hand wide open with it. But no, when I first started playing my white strat, Mr. White, especially, I would kind of like, I understand what you mean, especially palm muting, because I was in that punk band at the time. So palm muting was kind of like a big thing. But after a while, it doesn't really affect me anymore. It doesn't really bother me. You know, if the grub screws are sticking out the saddles quite far, it doesn't really bother me anymore. I've kind of learned to play with them, if that makes any sense. I think because I play strats all the time, because I'm a strataholic, I think I've developed certain techniques of not to run my hand down them, which is kind of something that I used to do when I used to cut my hand open when I first got my white strat, Mr. White. I would always run my hand down it and scratch my hand up, and then blood and terror would ensue. But no, I mean, I understand that, but I think it's just one of those things that you eventually just get used to, and you just kind of learn, you know, and eventually it won't kind of factor in as much. I'll let you in on a bit of a weird thing, people of YouTube here. There have been times at gigs where I've got that angry at myself that I have purposely gone to try and slice my hand open on my guitar just because I'm not happy with the way I'm playing that night. There have been times where I've purposely gone out the way to try and cut my hand open on my guitar. I don't know why. Just to punish myself, I'm guessing. I don't know. But the grub screws are great for that. You know, I'm not promoting this, by the way. This isn't a good idea to be doing. It's extremely stupid. So do not do what I do. It's extremely dumb. But I get so worked up at myself, especially playing live. I get really worked up. Like if I feel that like I'm not firing on all cylinders, I'm not doing good enough, I get really annoyed at myself and I get nasty at myself, and then I try and go at myself basically, and in so doing I go at the guitar, you know, because that's just an extension of me, and the grub screws are always kind of my go-to. I'm like, right, scrape your hand down it. Much in the same, I heard a story about Slash once. His guitar tech, Adam Day, said Slash in the Use Your Illusions tour, sometimes what he would do, he would he'd be smoking on stage and he would spit his fag out onto the Les Paul, and he would press it against himself to burn himself. And there's quite a few guitarists I know who do weird, silly things like this, and it's not a good idea to do it. But I think it's one of those things of, I don't know why. I mean, I just not fond of myself at that point in time. So I always try and kind of like go out my way to hurt myself or injure myself in one way or another, which is really stupid, really. I never go after this hand, but I do always kind of like just want to slice my hand open there, or end up trying to like get my nails, wrench them into the strings. There have been some gigs where I have been hitting the guitar that hard, I want the strings to break. I'm trying to snap the strings. I've done that in a few intro jams as well, actually, where I'm in that kind of weird frame of mind, where I'm kind of at now. More when I'm in Dark Dave mode than I'm light mode. But if I get into Dark Dave mode where I feel like I'm not doing enough, I will try and break the strings of the guitar. I just get really angry and just try and But again, that's me. It's not exactly the wisest choice to be doing it, people with tubes. So don't copy me, please. It's not clever and it's not smart and it's really, really blooming stupid, to be fair with you. But I can't help it. It's really kind of like when that part of me takes over, it kind of feels right to do it, even though it feels totally wrong at the same time. Really weird. Really, really weird. Anyway, there have been gigs where I just want to hurt myself, basically. Let's just say it. It's hard to say that, actually. But yeah, there have been gigs where that happens, and that still happens now, even when I'm playing on my own. There are times where I'm just get really angry, and my demeanour changes, and I just get really frustrated. And I remember John Joe talking about this, and John Joe says, you can always tell if it's a good gig or a bad gig depending on how I'm playing. Because if it's a really, really bad gig, I'll play really aggressively and nasty, and the guitar catches it, and I get really angry. If it's a really good gig, I'll play really differently. So John Joe always finds that really weird how you can always tell how I feel the gig's going for me, because obviously it's subjective. What could be an amazing gig for you could be a really bad gig for your drummer, or vice versa. You know what I mean? But John Joe always finds that really kind of amusing, and he always tells me you can always tell if I'm enjoying it or I'm not enjoying it, or I'm having a hard time or a good time. Or I'm struggling or I'm not. It's always there on kind of show. And there have been times in the past where I've been playing and I'm actually, I don't mean to do it, but because I play only small places like pubs, I tend to get a bit sweary with myself. And I've had some funny looks from people sometimes when I'm playing and I'll do something wrong or I'll make a mistake and I will just scream at the top of my voice, "You stupid effing whatever, Dave." And people can hear that because I scream it. And I just get nasty at myself. And I don't mean to do it. I want to be the best I can be. And if I feel I'm not being the best I can be, that's not good enough. So I push myself really hard. And I know some people say, "Oh, that's really a bad thing." Not to me. I like doing it, but that's the way I am. Can you tell I'm in a bit of a funny place, people with YouTube? I can feel it. I'm in a very weird place in my being today. It's in a very, very weird place. Anyway, but yeah, coming back to your question, I do apologise for the tangent. That obviously had to come out today. But yeah, the grub screws on Stratocaster bridges, yeah, I know, they can be a bit painful. If you don't like it, you can change your saddles. You can get stuff like Graphtec saddles or different kind of saddles, like the Chapman here. The Chapman here has got amazing saddles. These saddles here are amazing. They're brass, but they're so comfy. And you can see the grub screws are really far. I don't know how well you can see that, but the grub screws are really far in, and that really, there's no way you're going to cut your hand on this guitar. But you can get different saddles if it really does become a problem. You can always just change the saddles on guitar. It's not hard to change saddles and just re-intonate the guitar, especially a Stratocaster. You don't have to take strings out the block. You can just do it one by one. Just make sure that they're going to fit, because sometimes, depending on what guitar you've got, sometimes saddles might not fit. There might be different spacing. But if it becomes that much of a problem, then you can always change your saddles. But it just takes a bit of getting used to. But eventually you kind of get there. Like I say, it doesn't bother me anymore. I know I've developed ways that I don't do it unless I'm purposely trying to go at myself, basically. So yeah. Anyway, take a breath, Dave. Okay, people for tube. I'm going to move on to question 4 now. Okay, so question 4 today is, and I hope it's actually a question. I say usual. Hi. Yeah, thanks. Question 4 today is, what would you say is the one skill / technique you feel is the most essential for creating your sound? So I don't necessarily feel it's skill or technique. Well, it is, but it's a really hard question to answer, actually. To develop your own sound, for me, again, this is totally subjective, and I'm sure some people would disagree with me on this, and that's totally cool, because I say we all got our own little. Is that glass? Sorry, I'm distracted by there's glass on the floor. That's good. We'll put that there so I don't stand on that. So it's totally subjective to what, and totally individual to what makes you when it comes down to playing an instrument, guitar, bass, drums, whatever. It's totally subjective. To me, it comes down to amalgamating your heroes into one big chunk, one big ball, if you will. And that becomes you. You know, for me, it's trying to mash John Frusciante with Mike McCready, with Jimi Hendrix, with Peter Green and Rory Gallagher. It's trying to smash those three together and creating one thing. You know, that they're my biggest heroes, and they're the people I want to take and emulate. You know what I mean? And in so doing, find who I am. You know, and I feel I can do that by doing that, if that makes any sense. So I always quote this, but I think it's the most amazing line when it comes down to this kind of thing. John Mayer said, you sound like yourself when you fail to sound like your heroes. And that, to me, is perfect. You know, that really is... That to me, that sums it up. I mean, I know that's not the same for everybody. Everybody's different. But for me, that's exactly where I live. That's my brain function. John worded it in a way that I could never, and because he worded it so perfectly, I don't have to now. It's great. So thank you, John Mayer. But yeah, that's to me, that's it. You know, me trying to be John Frusciante, me trying to be Mike McCready and Rory Gallagher and Jimi Hendrix and Peter Green, trying to be all those things at the same time. I don't believe I've got my own voice yet. I don't think I'm anywhere near it. I'm striving for it. You know, that's one of the things I would like, where it's kind of like, you know, if I heard somebody play, if I heard a solo, I could pick me out, if that makes sense. If you know, if there was like 20 guitarists doing a guitar solo, I would like at the end of the day to go, oh, that's me there. You know what I mean? But I'm not there yet. I don't feel like I'm anywhere near that. But again, that's what I'm working for. I think it comes down to a lot of things. It does, yeah. I mean, definitely comes down to your ability to play. You know, you have to be fluent on the. You have to be able to get around the thing. You have to understand where you are. You need to know, you know, where you are in any given key, because you just need to understand the guitar. I think you also need to understand the tone that you want as well. Like I say, for me, I've always wanted. You know, I've been inspired by Jimmy and John and Rory and all those guys. I've always been inspired by their more singy, sustained kind of violin-y kind of tones. I've got loads of sustain. And like I always say, people with tube, I always want the guitar to sound like a violin, like somebody bowing a violin with the big long sustained notes, and then all of a sudden big fast kind of runs. You know, you can hear quite a lot of those in kind of Irish airs, where they'll have these really gorgeous, like, singing melodies, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, it's really fast violin runs where they go really far up an octave. And it sounds gorgeous to me. And growing up listening to that, it's really stuck with me. And I love that. And I've always wanted to kind of like translate that to a guitar. And I always find when you go to the neck pickup, that's more of that sound. Like when you're on the bridge pickup, it's more aggressive. But the neck pickup just has that kind of sing and that warmth of a violin, and I love the violin. So I've always loved it, to be fair. It's one of those. I remember my dad playing it when I was really young and stuff like that, and it's just amazing. But so you need, like I said, there is a couple of, like I say, you need to have all your heroes and smash them together. You need to be able to kind of play. Your technique needs to be kind of like, you know, to a standard where you can play. You know, you need to be able to feel as well. This is another thing. This is major to me. Is feel. You really, you know, the feel thing cannot be understated when it comes down to a musical instrument. You need to feel it when you play it. you really need to, you need to be able to channel emotion through the guitar, bass, drums, whatever you're playing. You really need to be able to translate that emotion through your instrument. I feel that's like massively important. Well, it is to me. Again, it's all subjective, but to me, playing with emotion is everything. Playing and not feeling, I'm going to quote Paul Gilbert here, playing and not feeling is like eating food without tasting it. And that's just like that. Again, Paul Gilbert, thanks for the quote. Perfect quote. Absolutely perfect. It is. I mean, can you imagine like having an amazing meal in front of you and you eat it, but you don't taste it? What's the point? What's the point? You want to savor it. And the same thing goes when you play guitars. If you're playing it, you want to feel every note, every chord, every sound, every mistake, every amazing bit where you thought, oh my god, I didn't think I could do that. Everything. It needs to be all encompassing. You really need to feel it all. It really needs to kind of like engulf you. And I hate when it doesn't. And that's normally when I'm playing from here. If I'm playing from here, then that's normally what's going on. If I'm playing from there, then I'm happy. I can feel it more, even though it might be sometimes it's traumatic and really heartbreaking because it makes me kind of relive certain things. But that's the point. I have to relive those things to get that emotion across, depending on what I'm doing at a specific time, depending on what I'm playing or what I'm trying to convey. So there are definitely skills. You need to understand scales. You need to understand your, at least basic theory. You need to understand of how to get from A to B to C to D to E. All the way up to Z. Definitely. You need to know this thing. You need to understand that. You need to understand that. You need to understand these. You need to understand pickups. You need to understand switching of the guitar. You need to understand your amp, your pedals, your sound. You need to understand all these things because you then need to kind of refine that to go, right, what do I want? What do I want my sound to be? What pickups do I prefer? What sounds do I prefer on the guitar? Like I say, for me, if I could have one pickup, it'd just be a neck pickup. If a person came to me and said you're only allowed to use one pickup for the rest of your life, one position, no ifs, no buts, what would it be? Neck pickup. No ifs, no buts, no question. I won't even have to think about it. It'd be the neck pickup. I mean, that's where I am quite a lot of the time. I love the neck pickup. If I could stay on it all the time, I would. But again, different emotions call for different things. But you can still get the neck pickup to scream. But you need to understand the fundamentals of where you're going. And you also need to know what you want. You really need to know what you want. You can't be thinking about what other people have told you should be doing or what your sound should be. You need to go by your inner self and go, what do I want? What do I want my amp to sound like? What do I want my guitar to sound like? Where am I going with this? What from this hero do I want to take, and what from this hero do I want to take? And there are some guitarists where I'm just like, I want that sound. I don't necessarily want to play like them, but I want that sound. So you need to think about all that really, and I think like. But again, this is just me. This might not work for everybody. And again, I'm sure some people disagree with me, again, which is totally cool. I don't mind it, if people have difference of opinion to me. You're supposed to have a difference of opinion to me sometimes. All the time. I know I said sometimes. That was really stupid. Idiot Dave. Didn't mean to say that. That's going to torture me for the rest of the day now. God, I'm such an idiot. Anyway, But yeah, I mean, everyone should have their own opinion on things. It's cool to agree with people, but it's okay to disagree. It's like, if somebody says something you don't like, it's okay to say, don't like that. It's like musical. I've spoken about this before about music. If you don't like a certain style of music, or you don't like a band or something like that, it's okay to say you don't like them. It's okay. And the same thing goes for anything. It's like, if somebody says, you need this guitar, you need this amp, and you need these pedals, and I don't want that. Don't cave to that pressure. Just go and get what you want. It's your penny to spend. You know what I mean? It's not them at the end of the day. You've got to make yourself happy with what you buy and what you play and the sound you have. There's no point in going out there and buying something you don't love. There is just no point in it. You need to buy something you love. You really do. And like I say, it needs to feel right, play right, sound right, and look right as well. You know, it needs to be all those things. And the same goes for an amplifier as well. It needs to, and pedals, you know, they need to give you what you want. And you need to find out yourself. You need to find out exactly what you want out of a guitar, amp, pedals, sound-wise. You need to know what that is. And then when it comes down to creating your own style, that's, you know, if you've kind of got an idea of the sound you want, you know, you can then start incorporating your heroes into that kind of thing. Going, well, that sounds like such and such. That sounds like such and such. Like my clean tone, I always wanted to sound like John Frusciante. My Governor sounds like Mike McCready. My DS2 sounds like John Frusciante. You know, when I kick on a wah-wah pedal, I try to channel Jimi Hendrix because he's the master of the wah pedal. You know, and certain other effects. You know, delay, Dave Murray, sorry. You know, when I certain other effects, there's you know, there's guitarists like Buckethead, there's Andy Timmons, there's Devin Townsend. You know, there's all sorts of different kind of sounds that I like. You know, that come from different people. You know, particle verb to me, the big kind of spready kind of reverb thing that I love. That's Devin Townsend. You know, the big delay is kind of Jimi Hendrix. The small delay is Dave Murray. You know, I could go on, you know. But again, when I play through those sounds, it doesn't necessarily sound like them sometimes. Sometimes it'll sound like somebody else. Sometimes I could play on my John Frusciante sound and it sound like Buckethead. You know, or I could play on my Mike McCready sound and it sound like Dan Hawkins from The Darkness. You know what I mean? All these things. I think as a musician and as a guitarist or a musician in general, don't have to be a guitarist, you can be a bass player, whatever. Shut up, Dave. You have to be a sponge. You have to just take everything in. You know, whatever comes your way, you have to take it in. Even if you don't retain it, you have to try it. You know what I mean? I remember when I was in London, I remember being able to 8-finger tap like this. Like I clearly remember being able to kind of go like that. I could do this, and I could sweep pick as well. I used to be able to sweep pick. Okay, I was never amazing at it, but I didn't retain those skills because I don't really like them, and then they're not really where I want to be. So you know, and again, that's the thing, is that you have to. There does come a point where you have to ask yourself what you want out of the guitar. And for me, it was the clincher was I just want to be able to play what I feel. That's what I want to do. You know, I want to be able to express my sadness, my grief, my anger, my aggression, my love, my heartache, whatever, through this and through one of these. You know what I mean? That's what I want to do. I'm not interested in being super flash or being the best guitarist in the world. I don't care about being the best guitarist in the world. I don't have to be the best guitarist in the world. I just have to be able to express myself. That's all I want to be able to do, and I've spoken about this a million times. But that's all I want to do, and I'm still working on that. I don't feel I'm anywhere near that, but hopefully one day, maybe I'll get there, because it's really important for me to be able to do that, like really emote through the instrument, because the guitar means so much to me that it's really hard for me to feel like I'm not doing it justice. You know what I mean? I'm not expressing the right emotions. So yeah. But yeah. So I mean, that's what I would say. That's for me. That's where I would say is getting you on the right path to find you. Is all that I've just spoke about. Personally, but again, it's totally subjective. What works for me won't necessarily work for you. You know, I feel what I've just said works for me. You know, I feel that's getting me on the right track to finding who I am. You know, because it just feels right. You know what I mean? And something that feels that right can't be wrong, in my opinion. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people have a go at me a lot for emulating John and trying to be John. And say, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's like, well, to you, no. I understand your opinion that I shouldn't be doing that, but that's your opinion. And to me, it feels right, so I'm going to keep doing it. You know what I mean? And that's the way it should be. If you disagree with somebody, if they say, oh, I don't think you should do that, but you feel like you should, then do it. You know what I mean? As long as it's not hurting anybody else, and as long as it's not kind of like, being silly, then that's the way you should go. As long as if somebody says, if you go, I want to jump off a building just to see what it's like, and somebody says, I don't think you should do that, and you go and do it anyway, you say that's a bit silly, isn't it? But when it comes down to stuff like this, if somebody said, people say to me all the time, like, you should stop being so obsessed with John. People even go as far as say, like, I'm sure he wouldn't like it. I don't care if John doesn't like my obsession with him. I don't care if he doesn't like the fact that I try and emulate him and I've been trying to get his sound. I don't care. He's my hero. He doesn't have to like it. He just has to accept it. You know what I mean? No one has to like the fact that I love John so much, apart from me, really. I don't really. That shouldn't really come into it, if that makes any sense. Like, he's my biggest hero on the guitar. He is. He's the biggest influence on me. Like I say, when I have no inspiration, I watch or listen to John, and I get it back. I'm all of a sudden inspired to do things. You know what I mean? I'm all of a sudden inspired to write, record, practice, play, whatever, mess around, whatever, find different sounds. He's that guitarist to me. And if he doesn't like the fact that that's his influence, then that's fine. But he has to accept the fact that is something that he has done. You know what I mean? Much in the same way as anybody's guitar hero. Eric Clapton, Steve Ray Vaughan, B.B. King, Jimi Hendrix, Rory Gallagher. All these guitarists have an effect on the people who look up to them. You know what I mean? We only ever get to stand in their shadows. I stand in the shadow of John Frusciante, Mike McCready, Jimi Hendrix, Peter Green, and Rory Gallagher. I stand in their shadows, but that's enough for me. I'm happy with that. You know what I mean? But just because it's wrong to you, just because it seems wrong to you, doesn't mean it is wrong to them or to somebody else. You know what I mean? Again, you need to walk your own path, and I'm going to talk about that a bit more in the future. But yeah. Anyway, I hope that's made some kind of sense. Anyway, people, I'm gonna have to go now because I'm gonna run out of time, and I'm gonna have to go and try and fight my demons today, which is never fun, and I'm not really looking forward to today. To be honest with you, it's currently 20-1 in the afternoon. Don't pause up my phone again. Yeah, this isn't going to be the most amazing day in the world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this vid for what it was. I hope I've answered your questions okay, people. I hope there's something in there you can take away. And I will see you again very soon for another vid. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening. And and if you want to submit a question for Q&A Wednesday, everybody, description box below has an email link. Email me there. Oh yeah, by the way, your eyes did not deceive you. I finally have 2 orange CR120s. Although it's black Tolex. But I finally have 2. And that's my sister ringing. So I'm going to get off, people, for tube. I'm choking. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again. Goodbye now. Thank you. Goodbye.